When I hear right wingers say that FDR is one of the worst presidents out there, just I cannot even believe my sight to hear that uttered out of their mouths. That FDR was a horrible president. That FDR was someone who was such a big disaster. Such a big disaster that he helped America win World War II. Such a big disaster that he helped America recover from the Great Depression. The greatest disaster out there that FDR passed the nation's first minimum wage was that helped spike aggregate demand, that helped the economy grow. All these shovel ready jobs that he had to rebuild our highways and infrastructure. For driving on today's roads, you can thank Franklin Delano Roosevelt for that. Pearl Harbor, staged by the deep state, but FDR was the leader who helped America recover from being attacked by the foreign enemy. Now, the Pearl Harbor theory is still legit that we knew the Japanese were coming and that we let it happen so we could have a pretext. That did happen in its regard. But when you look at FDR and what he did with the New Deal programs are still existing today. He passed Social Security. The Republicans said that Social Security was going to collapse. But did Social Security collapse? No, it did not. It's still here today. And when you hear this blasphemous right wing talking with utter blasphemy from their mouths, saying that Obamacare is going to collapse by itself, but excuse me, you same what said that about Social Security, and look at where Social Security is at today. Running at a surplus. Certain groups just take out of the Social Security fund. You have to blame the billionaires out there that are allowing their paid-for puppets to have this happen. That's exactly why FDR is the greatest ever. When you have an internal and external crisis, Abraham Lincoln helped keep this country together. And that deserves Abraham Lincoln automatically a top 5 spot on the list because he kept America and its regions together. He kept the factions alive, and Abraham Lincoln, his response after the Civil War was a big reason why he's up there in terms of being the greatest statesman and wanting to unite the country. So he is top 5 of all time. Even though my label is a liberal and maybe not necessarily Democrat because the Democrats don't support what the people want a lot of times. Even though I'm liberal, I recognize what George Bush has done for this country. And that's why you probably have to include Theodore and Franklin Roosevelt on the top 5 all-time list. I'm just not going to throw all Republicans in the list, even though Ronald Reagan was a big disaster. Ronald Reagan deserves a spot in the top 10 worst presidents for what he did with the debt or whatnot. The Soviet Union collapsed all by itself because of the failed system of communism for the rulers that took all the spoils for itself and got rid of, the art of incentive to do better for yourself or whatnot. And that's why we have this system today. But there's no reason why we can't have the government promote the general welfare to seek a better standard of life for its citizens. That is what FDR did with the New Deal. And FDR heavily influenced Lyndon Baines Johnson, who helped took millions of people out of poverty. This is why, Franklin Delano Roosevelt is like the Beatles. The Beatles influenced all the best musicians out there. And that's what FDR did for starting the foundation for creating programs that benefit working people, that make things more efficient. Old people when they retire, and we see healthcare today. So don't listen to these people out there, and don't listen to these right-wingers who tell you that Franklin Delano Roosevelt is one of the worst presidents of all time. This guy is the greatest because he won the deadliest war in history. He dealt with 2 enemy superpowers. He got one to ally with in order to beat a greater enemy. Of course, we're talking about the Nazis. And he was able to get through the differences of Joseph Stalin and to go out there and beat Adolf Hitler while at the same time doing this with our unemployment rate at 25%. Which other president is capable of repeating that? Is America even going to have a leader like that the next time we face a situation? Are we going to have that the next time around? That's the next question that we have. When you are dealing with devastation of the economy, when you're dealing with the loss of business, the collapse of the stocks, and unemployment at 25%, while at the same time having a war go on and have the Nazis and the Soviets. But excuse me, you are the greatest of all time. And if we didn't have FDR and during that time, then these superpowers today would still be viable. And we would most likely be talking about the Soviet Union. And without FDR, we do not, our standard of life is not like this today. We don't want to go out. Without the progressive era, we don't spend to have public education. Education would come down to privilege. This is what the progressive era brought to America. First minimum wage laws that helped spike aggregate demand, that helped create the way for the largest period of economic growth in American history. The 50s, in the 60s, back when taxes, marginal taxes were up, the billionaires, the businesses had the incentive to reinvest that money instead of giving it to the government. High taxes means more investment, not the other way, like what the right wing are saying. And contrary to what they're saying about high taxes being lower wages, higher taxes means you get paid more, right? When less is taken out of your check, then there's less demand to pay you from the employer. So low taxes means lower wages. Do you want this trickle-down nonsense? Understand what FDR paved the way for American history in terms of the most prosperous times that this country was at a period of time when more people believed in the American dream than they do today. But there's still hope to carry on the legacy of FDR. What can you do for your country instead of what your country can do for me? Listen to JFK. Don't let the Republicans tell you that you need more and more and more, that you need more to yourself, that you need to be a child out there, and you need to look out for the needs and welfare of others. That is the adult way of handling business in America. This is the liberal way of guiding America to ensure that this is the most prosperous state for as many people as can be. The happiest people in the world carry out liberal ideas. And you see high-speed trains and you see all this other infrastructure out in Europe. It should put America into shame that this government is bought and paid for by the billionaires. And we need that modern-day FDR. We need Bernie Sanders. Bernard Sanders is the modern-day FDR. This guy, if there was a messiah out there, it is Bernie Sanders. This guy is the most revolutionary threat to the billionaire class out there. Their power is limited with Bernie Sanders. Repeal campaign finance reform, have health care for all, lower the cost of premiums. That's what we have to do. Get the insurance companies out of there. Get rid of war drugs. Get rid of private prisons. Don't benefit the billionaire class. Have limited campaign finance. Bernie Sanders is the biggest threat out there. Ron Paul is the John Birch shill who is saying we should repeal estate taxes. We should have no campaign finance laws for the billionaires, the libertarian billionaires out there, these shills of billionaires that want to completely monopolize the power of the state to serve all the corporations instead of we the people. That is an FDR legacy. FDR, the greatest president ever, helped America recover from the Great Depression, won World War II, allied with Stalin to beat a greater enemy, Hitler. This guy is the greatest ever. We should continue on the FDR legacy of the New Deal, and may that continue with Bernie Sanders, and hopefully Elizabeth Warren can carry on the legacy of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I am counting on you to not be a corporate shill, Elizabeth.